Thank you. Thank you very much, Walid, and thank you for the invite. First of all, thanks for having me here. There's like a lot of crazy things happening outside at GTEC, so it's really huge and massive. And thanks for the opportunity of speaking here. So my name is Mumshad Mannambeth, and I'm a trainer at KodeKloud. So we teach Kubernetes and Docker and cloud native trainings. Since I am a trainer, I thought I'd first start with how a good student needs to be by showing how a good student I used to be back in college. So one of my mates at college sent me a video from an old archive showing how attentive and a good of a student I was. So this is how you all should be while training, taking courses. So that's basically me about, I think, 15, 17 years ago. I think it was a Linux class, and it was so boring. It was taught in such a boring way where a teacher would come in and open up a screen, a laptop, and start typing commands, and would turn on the light so it's visible on the screen, and that would set the perfect stage to start sleeping. So that's what I used to do. That's what I did. And so just a little bit about me. I worked as a sysadmin in the early days of my career, storage administrator, and then I moved on to developing software, did some automation work, solutions architect. I worked as a solutions architect in my final role, and then I moved on to teaching cloud native and Kubernetes concepts in 2017. Built KodeKloud, which is a learning platform to create a better learning experience for our students in 2019. And since then, I've been building Kubernetes courses and a learning community since. And if I'm not working, I'm either playing soccer or sleeping, as I just shared the evidence. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience building the Kubernetes learning community, and how I got to building a community and how we run the community. So since this is Kubernetes Community Days, I thought I'll probably focus more on the community aspect of things. And so I decided this is not going to be a very technical session. And I'll also share more about getting started with Kubernetes, how you can get started, and some resources, and then, of course, certs, because we have to talk about Kubernetes certifications. So in the early days of my career, I started working in storage and sysadmin as a sysadmin. So I really enjoyed automating and writing scripts and automating processes to save human hours, right? So I worked a lot writing scripts and automations using Python or Bash or whatever I could get my hands on. And I was working with a VMware-based project where we had to automate deployment of a process that took like months to build. So basically, VMware had a VMware Enterprise Hybrid Cloud solution that put together multiple VMware products like the vRealize Orchestrator and vRealize automation tools if you're from a VMware background. And it would take, there are about 10 different services that need to be put together on VMs. So everything from provisioning VMs to installing the software, configuring it, all of these had to be done manually. And it used to take like two months. And we had to build an automation solution that did it in about 8 hours. So that was my first major project that I worked with a bunch of developers. And we had multiple solutions that went in. We had Ansible for automation. We had a bunch of Python scripts that did some automation. We had a web console that actually provided the interface to do the automation. And we had to put it all together in a way that we can easily onboard new developers. And we found it quite challenging that there were so many dependencies, and to build a developer environment, it was really hard. When new developers came in, they found it really hard to put together this development environment. So one thing I did was build images of virtual machines, and then I packaged it up with all the dependencies in it, so you can just deploy the virtual machine and you readily have a development environment. So that worked for a while. But then every time something had to be changed, we had to repackage it and we had to reshare that, and then developers had to destroy their existing environment and re-provision new environments. So I knew there was a better solution, and that's how I researched, and I came across Docker. And I realized how easy it was with Docker to create a Docker file, build an image with all the dependencies, and you can just go from having nothing to having an environment to start working on. So I kind of used Docker as a development environment initially, and then later I realized it was just easy to just use the same images in a production environment. So that was my first kind of step, I would say, to the cloud native world, and thanks to Docker, I was really amazed by how it made our lives so simple. Once all the developers picked up on Docker, it was super easy for us to collaborate going forward. So I shared it with the rest of my team. I was so excited with Docker, how Docker worked, and I shared it with the rest of the team. But they didn't seem to be that interested. So, but I was still excited, and I had to share it with the rest of the world. So I started creating content outside of my work. So I started creating YouTube videos and creating courses on other platforms, and then people really started liking the courses, and so I kept creating more and more courses, and eventually I ended up having like 10 plus courses on various platforms. So the focus shifted to building communities. People really liked some of the courses, so I could bring them together as growth communities. So growth communities are where you're working towards a common set of goals. So you all have the same goals. You're working together in the remote world. So we were born right before COVID hit. So everybody was remote. It was fully distributed, but using tools like Slack and other community collaboration tools, we were able to bring people together into a closer environment and basically bring learners and educators together, provide great learning content and infrastructure, and then that way people help each other, but also kind of provide constructive feedback, So our CKA course, which is the one for Kubernetes certification, we recently crossed 200,000 plus students, so we have a community of 200,000 plus students going through the CKA course. And we have a Slack channel where we bring everybody together. We have some gamification and other aspects. So there's about 56,000 plus members right now and growing. So if you're not already part of this community, you can just scan the QR code there. I'll also show it at the end of the presentation. And you can join our Slack channel. You'll get an invite and you can easily join our Slack channel. So initially we set aside a certain values for our community, which kind of build a culture around sharing, helping each other. So basically, anyone who asks a question needs to get an answer within a specific period of time. So we had teaching assistants and others part of the community who constantly help students with any kind of queries that they had. So that be it, questions about specific topics that they are going through, or something to do with the lab, or just a general query about or career advice and things like that. So we had students, and when we put all the students together, we kind of found how all the students just started to help each other in just helping them by helping themselves learn better. Also, we encourage humble brag, so we ask students to share their successes in LinkedIn, which a lot of students have already been doing, and also on our Slack channels, and encourage others to do the same. And also, we encourage users to share tips and tricks, which you'll often find in the communities on how they crack the certifications. So be it either working with imperative commands, or working with how long you should spend on labs and on mock exams and stuff like that, and where you can get more practice if you needed to, other than our own courses and stuff. So, and of course, all of these is governed by a set of rules. So we encourage students not to ask questions about the actual exam itself, and also encourage them to not violate the NDA agreement that they are bound to. But other than that, they could really ask each other any questions and get engaged. So the community was at the core of everything we did. So we often conducted surveys and feedbacks and asked students, what their levels were on certain topics. So for example, networking and security and storage, we had students from different backgrounds, either were junior developers or junior sysadmins, and sometimes they missed some of the basic knowledge of either networking and security and storage, or if they were a sysadmin background, then they kind of missed some of the basic knowledge about how applications are packaged and built and deployed. So all of this data, we kind of ran surveys very often, and based on that, we kind of curated our learning content and created courses to suit their needs. And of course, feedback about labs, if there are things that are wrong in the labs or in the course content itself, the community was the first place that we looked to understand how to improve. So we constantly looked into the community, and it became a central source of feedback for us to improve our platform. So when it came to certification challenges, when we started the certification courses, we realized that because these certifications are hands-on and they're time-bound, it's hard, and it's hard for, and a lot of students didn't really have that hands-on experience. So not all of our students come from a background where they have access to Kubernetes clusters in their work environments. So there was really no hands-on experience, and just creating videos and guiding them to read the documentation pages was not going to help. So we needed something better to really give them that hands-on labs, and that's how we came up with the labs idea, where you must have seen these labs if you've gone through our courses. So we give questions and encouraging multiple choice questions, or stuff that you have to actually do, and then we kind of validate their work and kind of give them feedback instantly. So we had really good reception for our labs. So to date, we have provisioned over 7.5 million sessions on labs, and you can see on a usual day, we provision more than 40,000 sessions. So that's over 1,000 sessions every hour. So we have, at every hour, we have about 1,000 concurrent users working on 1,000 exclusive Kubernetes clusters at any given point. And so some of our users, this is an average that you can see, have spent thousands plus hours just working on our labs, just gaining that hands-on experience. So that kind of became key to getting certified, and getting that hands-on experience that's going to eventually help get certified. So how do you start your learning journey? So Kubernetes is just like any other technology. It's important that you have your prerequisites right? Of course, since the exam itself is Linux and you're going to work most of the time on a command prompt, you definitely need to get your Linux basics right. You need to get your networking, security, and storage basics right. Like most of the developers, those who are from the development background, you're very used to writing code in Python or Go, but sometimes the basics about networking and how routing and IP, assigning IP addresses, and the real basics about either security like TLS or storage, how storage works is missing. So those are some of the prerequisites that needs to be understood. And then you have, and if you're from a sysadmin background, then you know all of this, but you're missing some of the prerequisites related to the development itself, which is basically how applications are packaged and how they're built. So understanding some of those basics will definitely help. And then before Kubernetes, of course, since it's a container orchestration system, you need to know about containers. So that's the first thing that I would recommend, maybe starting with Docker, learning how Docker works and understanding how containers work. And then moving into Kubernetes, building a local cluster, learning the absolute basics of pods, deployments, and deploying a basic application that's going to help. And of course, get certified, absolutely. So why certifications, right? So that's the question I get sometimes. Certifications versus skills versus work experience. So of course, nothing can beat work experience. The amount of hours you put in, what you learn when your production grade systems go down, nothing can really beat that. But of course, when you're getting started and you're not already part of a team that's working on Kubernetes, then certifications really come into play. So it's a goal that you can work towards. So that's the first thing. So you can either decide that you're going to spend 15 to 20 minutes learning a new technology and then decide you know enough, or you can pick a certification which will take you like 2 to 3 to 6 months even to really practice and get that hands-on experience. So that's something that really matters. So certifications provide you the structured learning. So there's a curriculum that you have to follow and learn and practice to get certified. And most importantly, as Sayam and I discussed earlier this morning, so it is the journey that's going to give you the benefits more than the destination, right? And we've also had people who have actually worked for years with production-grade Kubernetes clusters come and take the courses and take the certifications and tell us that they learned a lot more than they would while working on their systems. And that's mostly because while you're working in an environment, there may be areas that you're not really working towards, right? There may be things that you're not using, like either operators or some areas in security or OPAs. But when you go through a security certifications, you are forced to learn those concepts. So that's why certifications. So coming to certifications, today there are like 4 certifications. So that's the KCNA, the Kubernetes Cloud Native Associate Certification. And then you have the CKA and CKAD. So that's the administrator and the application developer certification. And then you have the security specialist, the CKS cert. So just going through these real quick. So the KCNA is what is the real beginner level certification. It's the newest certification that's added. It tests your conceptual knowledge of cloud native ecosystem. So it's a multiple choice exam. All the others are real hands-on exam where you have to type in commands and get things done. But this one is a multiple choice question exam. And the curriculum is basically all the fundamentals, right? So the Kubernetes fundamentals, cloud native architecture, the container orchestration fundamentals, observability and application delivery. So the CKAD is for developers building applications to be deployed on Kubernetes. So you're not really looking at building a Kubernetes cluster from scratch or architecting or the cluster itself or maintaining the cluster itself, but you're more focused on how your applications can be deployed on the cluster. So this is, again, a 2-hour-long exam that is online and proctored, and it's a performance-based exam. So you're going to have to actually write your commands and write your YAML files and work on those. So again, the curriculum is designing and building applications to be deployed on a Kubernetes cluster, how they are deployed on a Kubernetes cluster, how you monitor your applications, how you check the logs. Then, of course, environment variables, security, secrets, and then finally services and networking. So the CKA, the most famous of all certifications, is a professional level certifications, and it basically tests your knowledge on building and maintaining Kubernetes clusters. So that's building cluster from scratch, installing, doing the troubleshooting on it, working on how workloads are scheduled, the architecture itself, networking, storage, all of that. So that's also a 2-hour-long performance-based exam. And finally, the CKS is the security certification. So for this, you must be a CKA certified professional, and then this is for engineers who are responsible for securing clusters and deploying applications on them. So I would say that's everybody. Everybody needs to learn the security side of things because that's something that we easily overlook most of the time. So that's something that this is one certification that I would encourage everyone to go through and get themselves certified. So it talks about hardening, the system hardening, vulnerabilities in microservices, supply chain security, among some of the lists. And finally, I'm going to talk about a little bit of tips. So there's time management. I'll talk a little bit about imperative commands. And if you're preparing for your certifications, your experience working with a YAML file, troubleshooting, and etc. So usually certifications have 19 to 20 questions, right? And some of them are like easy ones, right? So there are a lot of easy ones, and that take very less time. There are some that make you think a little bit, but you're not really sure of. And then there are a couple of questions or a few that are really hard, right? So, if the goal is really to get through as many questions as possible and get enough points to complete the certification. And even if you don't get all of them right, and if you skip a few, get enough of them right, then you still have the chance to get certified, right? Now, one of the things that you shouldn't do is try and get stuck on any one question. So as engineers, we have that urge to really troubleshoot and figure out issues and not let go. And if you try to do that during a certification exam, you're going to lose your time and end up not getting certified, right? So the smart thing to do is make sure you set a time for each question, like 2 minutes max. And if you can't do it, or 2 attempts to do something, and if you can't do that, you skip that over and go over to the next, and then finally come back and reattempt them. So the goal is really to attempt all questions. So that's the first thing. Secondly, don't get stuck, as I said, and you need to really get good with your YAML files. Of course, nobody likes YAML files, but if you're going to have to get certified, you need to get your YAML right? So it doesn't have to look really pretty, like the one on the right. It's right, but it's still not pretty. But it doesn't really matter. You're not going to be judged based on how pretty your YAML files are. You just need to make sure the structure is right and get it working. Yeah, and always use imperative commands, right? So try to not use YAML as much as possible. So the kubectl run command to create pods, the create deployment command. So there are a lot of objects that you can create using the kubectl create command. So like the deployment in this case, and then to create services, you could use the kubectl expose command. So these are some of the examples, but there are many imperative commands that we kind of list down. And of course, use shortcuts and aliases to save time, but also don't spend too much time like setting up aliases. Yeah, so some of the questions I usually get are like, you go through the exam, you think you did it right, but then you realize that it didn't work out. And that could be because some of the naming conventions may be confusing, right? There could be an O that might look like a 0. So you always want to copy and paste names of pods or images that you're going to create, and always validate your work. And instead of running out of time, as I said, use some of the time management steps that I mentioned, and use imperative commands. Yeah, and finally, don't get stuck, as I said. Well, yeah, so that's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot. But yeah, it was really a pleasure coming here and meeting you all. And thanks for your time.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Mumshad. I mean, amazing talk. I think a lot of folks over here who are new to Kubernetes, you may have actually gone on Reddit and searched on how do you actually get started learning for the certifications. And you start seeing recommendations of KodeKloud.com coming in all over the place. And so it's awesome to just have Mumshad come and share about how you can actually get started along with the whole journey which he's had. I'm happy to take any questions right now. We have 5 minutes until the next speaker comes up. Any questions? Any burning questions? Anyone doing the certification? Or anyone who's done the certification? Any experience for Mumshad? Nice.
Yep, no worries.
Also, I just have one specific question because I think one of the images had you had this thing of number of visits from different domains, country domains. So I couldn't see that clearly. Which were the top 3 countries you saw from that? From visitors who are actually learning.
So that was not from the countries, but that was user emails. But I actually kind of disabled it. But yeah, to answer your question, it's mostly like. I think the top 2 countries for like any tech education platform is like, it has to be US, India, and then the rest are like spread across, you have Europe, Middle East, and Southeast Asia.
Nice.
But yeah, primarily it's US and India, yeah.
Awesome. And one of the things is with Mumshad, he's been running a work from home remote company for the last few years especially. So it's awesome to just see how he's been growing the firm and the platform, enabling people to grow, but at the same time, working remotely. So amazing. I just saw somebody raise a hand. Question? Yeah.
Hello. Actually, I'm planning for the certification. I'm from the software side. I'm a developer. So what certification should I go for? I have already seen the application developer one, but are there any more? Number two, how longer, what's the expiry of the certification? 3 years for AWS, I think it is 3 years. So what's for the Kubernetes? And there was one more I have forgotten, but.
Yeah, I'll answer the two, and then you can remember the third one by then. So yeah, if you're an application developer, if you're from a development background, then the CKAD, the Certified Kubernetes Application Developer, is the right certification. But that's like very specific to, that's a hands-on exam and very specific to how you would deploy applications, right? But it's also important to have that overall knowledge of how the entire cluster works. So I would recommend the KCNA certification that that gives you the fundamentals. But at the same time, it also talks about the high availability features and the auto scaling and things like that. So that also is good to learn from as an application developer. But yeah, those two is what I would recommend. And the expiry, I think it's 3 years. 3 years is the expiry date, yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question here. What is the official website for the courses? Because I saw you on KodeKloud and I saw you on Udemy as well.
Yeah.
And is there more than these websites?
No, so it's just the two. So first, the courses were on udemy.com, and then for the labs, we built our own platform, which is KodeKloud.com. So that's why we have the courses on Udemy and our platform. But yeah, KodeKloud.com is the main platform.
Okay. Question B.
Yeah, this is about the responsibilities between DevOps and an SRE. So can I use your courses for the responsibilities or the roles for an SRE? I understand that an SRE is mostly related to monitoring and SLAs and SLOs. So will in future be there any courses in your portal for this, basically?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we're already working on a lot of new courses. So, like for example, Prometheus certification, that's something that we're working on right now. We already released a lot of like Linux-based courses, which I believe is the new way to learn Linux. So it's like follows the same format of all of our other courses where you have like bite-sized videos and then labs. So learning Linux, and then getting certified, and then all the monitoring tools like Prometheus, Grafana, Thanos, all of that's coming. So I think those would go there. And then of course DevOps side, we have all the courses that we already have today, and there will be more coming there as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Mumshad.
Right.
And
thank you guys.
folks, yeah, Mumshad's around for questions. And
yeah, sure.
he's definitely going to be taking questions over here. So do please meet up with him. We'll welcome our next speaker on the stage.
Thank you guys. Thank you all.
Thank you so much,
very
Mumshad.
Yeah.